Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe now for future content. If you would like to have your story featured on an upcoming video, email my email in the description box below. Please make sure to leave a like on this video because it will help it reach so many more people. Please help me in 2022. I really want to grow my channel so I can turn it into a full-time thing. That would mean longer videos, 5 to 6 videos a week if I could do this full-time. So please help me make that a reality. Sit back, relax, enjoy, stay sinful. There was this guy who would always stare at me at the bar. Many visits later, he asked me if he can buy me a drink and sit by me. I hesitated but thought maybe he's just awkward, so I said yes. It was a $4 beer, by the way. Someone tapped me on my shoulders, so I turned away from him for a few to say hi. When I turned back, I noticed he got nervous. His hands were under the table, and his phone fell to the floor. I stared at him like, what the hell? His excuse was, it's not what it looks like. My hands were tapping my screen. My phone was locked and my fingers must have turned my camera on and snapped a pic. I was just nervous. I called security over as he is a good friend of mine and told him what I saw. He asked the guy to show him the pic or pics he took. Security deleted it, so it was just one. The creep got kicked out. A few months later, I get a message from an unknown number saying, "Hey, this is so-and-so from the bar." We had drinks one night at the bar and we hit it off really well. Sorry I haven't messaged you back. I went out of state for work. I asked for a pic confirmation. He sent one and I did remember the man in the pic. We only text messaged a little bit and that was that. A few weeks later I got a message and he says he's having a house party and a few people from that bar will be there. He named off names and I knew all of them, so I said sure. He didn't send me his address, but he said I can meet him at a store parking lot nearby and could follow him there. When I showed up, he got out of his car and knocked on my passenger side window. I lowered it, but he was pulling the handle, so I let him in without thinking about it. When he sat down, it took my mind a few seconds to register that face. It wasn't the man in the pic. It was the creepy guy from the bar. Jaw dropped and in shock again. I snapped out of it, yelled for him to get the F out of my car. He begged to give him a chance to explain and calm down. I just wanted to tell you I didn't take the pic on purpose. I really like you. Will you give me another chance? After threatening him with gun violence and the cops, he got out and I didn't wait for him to shut the door. I just took off. Turns out he paid one of the waitresses at the bar for my number. She was reprimanded. So I live at my dad's with my boyfriend. This house is built on land my great-grandmother had in her will before passing away. We've lived here for about 10 years. My family in this town have been living here for about 60. The only kind of haunting we've encountered were those of long-dead pets coming to say hello. We live in a 3-story house. I have one of the biggest rooms because I was the only girl. My dad wanted my rights to privacy, so I have the largest room with a quarter bathroom and a walk-in closet. I'll hear things move on their own or fall randomly, crinkling sounds and thuds. One night in particular, me and my boyfriend are laying in bed just watching YouTube. I pause the video because sometimes we'll go into deep conversations. We were in the middle of one and turned off my TV, so I had no distractions. We're getting ready for bed and just about to turn off a lamp. We hear something strange. A little girl giggling, and we have thin walls. We don't know any little girls, or that laugh, and it was behind our bed, which is against the wall on the other side. I yelled at my dad upstairs if he heard anything weird. He didn't. So me and my boyfriend just sat there not being able to sleep, hearing a little girl giggling behind us. We still feel weird stuff, hear weird voices and sounds. We have no idea what it is, but it still freaks us out. This was a few years ago, but when I was younger, either 10 or 11 years old. For context, my grandmother lives on one side of my estate, and I live on the other. My dad was talking to my grandmother, and I had started walking on. I'd looked up and a guy who lived in my estate was approaching me. He had started to ask me stuff like my name and where my dad was. I was wearing my dad's jacket of his favorite football team, which I guess was his excuse for talking to me, and then this guy asked me about the team. I don't like football, so I just shrug and look for my dad, as this guy was about a foot or two away now. I was walking the other side of the road from this guy's house, so he had to get up, walk over his garden, which is decently large, walk over the grass patch with trees and stuff, which is also decent sized, and cross the road to reach me. My dad came running up behind me and put his arm around me, told the guy we had to get going. I didn't find out until a few weeks ago that the guy is a registered level 3 sex offender. The guy knew my dad. It could have been just friendly chat, making sure I was all right, but the guy and his son stare at me every time I pass. This is a true story. One time late at night, me and my best friend were having a sleepover. We were probably around 12 years old or something like that. One thing we used to do was make joints out of tea. Yes, we made tea joints and smoked them before we knew how to get weed, anyway. My friend had rolled one the day before. We planned to smoke it late at night in my backyard. It was around 3 p.m. and me and him decided to go out and smoke it. We were out there for a good 10 minutes without anything strange going on. Then suddenly we both hear loud footsteps sprinting at us from the woods. Keep in mind it's 3 a.m. and the woods are pitch black. The only light we had was what we had from our backyard, which was not very powerful to begin with, but it was just enough to see. We both heard footsteps and we both made a dash to the door to my house. We didn't even look back when we got inside. We locked ourselves in a bedroom and slept in the same bed because we were so scared. To this day, around 6 years later, we both have no idea what it was that was sprinting at us. The footsteps were super heavy, and they didn't sound like a four-legged creature. Can someone please try to explain what the hell we heard that night? When I was younger, I lived in a trailer park a couple miles outside of town. I remember there was a little park. It was definitely old and a lot of play equipment was broken, but to 6-year-old me it was heaven. I remember one night my older sister's friend was staying at our house, and I was a very bratty child who wanted everything my sister had, so I tagged along with my sister and her friend to the park. My sister and her friend were 10 at the time. The sun was beginning to set, but our mom still let us leave, so we decided to go to the park. My sister was very annoyed that I came with her, so her and her friends ignored me, and I sat by myself on the swings while they hung out. Like I said, the sun was setting and it was almost dark. I was looking around, just being the curious kid I was, and looking at other people's yards at all the bikes and outside toys. I then saw a shadow, but I just brushed it off as a tree or something and kept on swinging. I then saw it again, but I realized it was like the shadow of a person. I wasted no time in jumping off the swing and telling my sister we need to go home. We ran home and told our mom. The trailer park was searched, but no one seemed suspicious. It was very weird because it's like the shadow was just watching us at the park. I was a very creative kid, but I know this wasn't just something I made up in my mind. I still wonder to this day if it was actually a person or not, just watching kids play at the park at night. It's possible that this was a genuine encounter, but it's also very possible that it wasn't. I'm curious to know if anyone has experienced something like this and can maybe give insight on this interaction I had with a stranger may have had more to it. The other night I was on a business trip by myself in Southern California and decided to go see the sunset at a beach with a large boardwalk. I'm a 5'2" woman in my mid-20s and from an urban city in the Midwest. My job often involves me traveling by myself, and I'm familiar with the area of Southern California that I was in. Because of the city I'm from and the nature of my job, I do my best to be well informed on safety, situational awareness, and how to identify and confidently respond to red flags. That brings me to the other night. I took a walk down the boardwalk at a leisurely pace, while occasionally stopping to take a brief picture of the sunset. I wanted to stop for a second, but didn't want to block the walkway, so I moved out of the way and happened to do so with my back against a building. As I was taking a picture, a man approached me and started a conversation. I was wearing a crossbody purse, so I put my phone back inside of it and kept my hand in my purse clutching my phone and left my hand there for the entire interaction. The man was a few inches taller than me and fairly thin, so he did not appear to be physically threatening. What stood out most was his demeanor. He looked so nervous, almost sweating even, and jittery. The interaction was fairly brief and I kept a polite but reserved demeanor. He told me he's looking to make friends in the area, and I told him I'm not local. He asked where I was from and I said the Midwest, and asked him the same. He said he recently moved from Japan. I said meeting people can be hard, and he got a little awkward and tense. I made a point to look behind me a few times to see if there was anything suspicious like another person coming up from behind, but no one stood out. Being against a building made it easier for me to have full view. I told him I'm going to meet my friend down the walk, and we went our separate ways. I walked away at a brisk pace in the direction I was originally going, but wanted to keep an eye on him to see if he was following. At a few points I turned my head over my shoulder to see him staring me down, while almost running in a perpendicular direction towards a bathroom. Once he got into the bathroom, I walked a little further to an area with a lot of people. I thought I could blend in a crowd. I sat on a bench to face the bathroom, although I was a little far and couldn't make out details. I knew what color he was wearing, so I waited until someone who resembled him came out. A few minutes later, I saw what was likely him exit the bathroom and go the other direction. I did not see or encounter him the remainder of the evening. This story occurred a few years back. I would have been around 8 or 9 years old at the time. My old bedroom sat facing out towards the street and also happened to be right next to our front door. It was very small as it had been built in place of our old front porch. The roof was slanted slightly downward toward the window, which took up most of the wall, and the bed could only fit in one way. It was painted purple, not a nice purple either, like a kid's bedroom, of course. My bed sat facing towards the door to my bedroom, parallel to the window. A closet took up part of the corner between my bedroom door and the window, making for an unusual space. Every night I checked to make sure the curtains were shut all the way, as the idea of people watching from the street made me very uncomfortable, even at a young age where things like that shouldn't even cross my mind. Every night I sleep soundly, no nightmares, no sudden noises waking me in the middle of the night, nothing. That was until the middle of the year during a school break. I remember waking to the sound of someone breathing. I couldn't move, couldn't catch my own breath. I was just stuck. I remember so clearly seeing a man stood in the corner of my room, stuck partly between the curtain as if it would hide him. Of course, I could see him. He was just this dark entity who stood and watched. After what felt like hours, I was able to go back to sleep. In the morning, I told my mom about what had happened. She explained it was just a strange nightmare and that I was fine, but the way she said it wasn't very believable. These cases of sleep paralysis went on for about a year, taking me up to the middle of next year, when I was likely 9. I remember waking in the middle of the night, just like I had most nights for the last year, to the man in the corner. Only this time, I could move. I stayed absolutely still, despite now knowing he was actually there. I could hear his faint breathing, like he was trying to hide from me as much as I was trying to hide from him. I couldn't help but think, has this man been here every night this year? I remember the thoughts I had, how I would run out of the room and scream for my mom, how she would call the police, how this man would be arrested and sent away. But I couldn't do that. He was basically in the front of the door. I spent the night staring at him, trying to fall asleep. I'd say it was around 5 a.m. and I was able to drift off, just sort of as the birds started to wake. I woke up and lo and behold, he was gone. The first thing I did was tell my mom. She already looked uneasy, like she already knew. That's when I heard 2 people talking outside. I found out later the people outside were my neighbor and a police officer who was taking an eyewitness statement. Around 6 in the morning, our neighbor spotted a man standing outside my window. She called the police, but he was gone before they arrived. Other neighbors stepped forward saying they'd seen him outside in the middle of the day looking at our house. There was no signs of forced entry, only 2 footprints in the flower bed outside my window. My mother told the officers of my account, and they came to the conclusion that he'd done the same thing last year, and it sparked my tangent of sleep paralysis. The streetlight outside projected his shadow, so it appeared as though he was stood in my room. This whole time he'd been waiting patiently outside my room. Who knows what would have happened if my neighbor didn't spot him on her way out for work. Just a few minutes and she could have missed him entirely. Thank you guys for watching and listening to the very end. Please be sure to email your scary stories to my email in the description box below. And please make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and share these videos with your friends. Until we meet again, stay sinful.